Was it episode 11 that got nominated for an Emmy? Can you talk a little bit about that Mom City as we were talking about before we started?
Yeah, it's weird to say Mom City as a
Uh,
Kiwi, but I'll get used to it eventually. Yeah, it's the scale and scope of it is quite interesting. Jason and Brendan and Bill wrote this amazing episode, which had the team Richmond playing in Manchester City's Etihad Stadium. So I don't know if you've ever visited a Premier League stadium, but there's two things. The first is if you put a toe on their grass over the white line, a groundsman somewhere who you can never spot them, they're hiding, will yell, extremely colorful language at you. So we knew we weren't going to be able to shoot on the pitch, but as we'd been doing prior, we didn't ever shoot on a Premier League football pitch. We shot at Yedding, which is a semi-professional team out in West London, which was across the road from our studio, which made it super convenient. And they were absolutely brilliant, the club. They had a groundsman there who was lovely, Derek. He's actually the groundsman in the show. He's riding the little ride-on mower.
Nice.
So he would prepare a ground for us. They'd put everything up. We'd run some green screens around. And so we would shoot all of the football footage in Yedding's ground, knowing full well we were going to strip in other grounds. With Manchester City, the only slight difference we realized when we went up there was the ground drops off quite significantly at the sides. So we had a LiDAR company, Visual Skies, come in and LiDAR the whole of Manchester City's ground. So we knew the differences between what we were shooting at Yedding and what we were looking to achieve later. Visual Skies did a great job. They shot LiDAR and photogrammetry, so we were able to map in sections of the stadium, but we knew we were going to build it in CGI. They were just giving us the extra flourishes on top to make sure all of it was super accurate, because if you get one little bit wrong, there'll be a football fan somewhere who will have a say. To his credit, Brendan Hunt, who's Coach Beard in the show, he's got a football brain like you wouldn't believe. He's ridiculously experienced and knowledgeable on football. And so he was great because he was always on set when we were shooting the football, helping out Pedro, the second unit director, who covered all of the football. Pedro did a great job. So there was a whole lot of football brains involved in it. And we would shoot at Yedding, and then I would create these maps with the script supervisor. And what we would do is we would map out where on the pitch we were in Yedding. We would map out where in theory we were in Manchester City. And then we would work out some camera blocking, we'd work out some things. But typically speaking, our camera setups would all be based on real world ones. So pitch line cameras and a gantry camera and a goal camera. And we would work with a broadcast setup effectively. We were shooting on ARRI cameras. We weren't shooting on broadcast cameras. We shot on ARRI Alexa. And so we would have this plan of where we were in the stadium. We knew what we were doing. And then after we'd shot the football, we would then go up to Manchester. We went up to City and we sat in the stands at the dugouts and the corporate boxes and any, changing rooms and things like that. And we shot all the additional material that was, more narrative based rather than football based in those scenes, with a few hundred extras in the crowd. And then it was a case of putting it all together. Yeah, which is, handing it over to the amazing team at London VFX. So we knew we were putting stadiums around, we were putting dugouts in, we were having to cover all of the crowd, all of the, extra bits and bobs that you get, like photographers and linesmen and stewards and all that. And it was a case of stitching it all together. So in terms of what we were achieving, we shot in anywhere up to 5 different locations that were put into one, because we had crowd shoots, we had Yedding shoots, we had dugout shoots, and we had to ensure that it all felt seamless. All the eye lines were right, all of the action was happening in the right places. And so, yeah, it was a fairly mammoth task, but it's really interesting the way the football plays out. Because I don't know if you can remember did you watch any sports when it was the middle of the pandemic, when they didn't have crowds?
No, but I love some of the internet going crazy because they see photos of New Zealand actually with people playing football and everyone's yelling like, why aren't you, separating? It's just like, because we took it seriously in the beginning.
Yeah. When they tried playing the Premier League here without any crowds in it. So there was no crowds because of the pandemic. So what happened was you had this weird game of football where you could hear all the players yelling at each other, which was great. But sat at home, it didn't feel like a football game. And I think that's a really lovely analogy for what the guys at Barnstorm were able to achieve, because what the players and actors were doing on the pitch was the narrative, and it was all beautifully written. But until it had the crowds in, the atmosphere of a Premier League football match wasn't necessarily there. So it was really important. It was super important for everybody to bring that atmosphere to these sequences in Mom City. So we had real performers really being filmed, really being captured in a volume stage, and then put into this stadium digitally. Real people, real performances, because we knew that was what would be required. It's not it sounds relatively simple to fill a stadium up with fans, but what would happen in Ted Lasso is there's these really lovely beats and arcs in the script where, Manchester are getting ahead and Richmond are failing. So you've got to balance the crowds out. You've got to match the emotions of how a crowd feels and reacts to a moment on a field, and really enhance the sequences, enhance the scenes using that. And the edit would change. And so we knew we had to have a relative amount of flexibility moving forward to change the crowds. So it wasn't a simple case of just, okay, well, we'll tile the stadium because there's 53,000 seats or something up there. So we knew we had to have a nice little technique to fill the stage, to fill the seats in a way that was flexible, because you want them to be anxious, you want them to be excited, you want them to be calm and maybe relaxed while the play's in the middle of the pitch. So we went to great lengths to make sure that we were using real people, real performances, and trying to build on that emotion. And we did that using a few techniques, but the primary one was we volume captured on Metastage a group of people one by one that were enabled us to have all of the emotions. So we had this video that we would play to people before they went onto the stage. And the play, it was like a choreographed dance. So they would have this, now we need you to go crazy. Oh, your team's losing. Oh, down you go. And it's no biting. And it's exciting. And no. And so you'd end up with all of these really emotive beats, and they all aligned. So we were able to then put all of these captures together, knowing that they were doing the same emotions at the same time, which meant that when we put the sequences together, if you needed excited, we knew where in that capture it was, and we would align that. And then the guys at Barnstorm aligned it, put it into the shots, and helped add all of that emotion to all of those scenes. It was really nice to see that all of the people in all of the crowds are real people giving real performances. I think it helps.
If I recall, a lot of games were trying to put cardboard cutouts of people in the stadium just to help, I guess, the players.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, like there's an audience.